Hello, I'm on with you a little early because I just wanted to make sure that you knew I was here and I was coming. So if anybody has joined early, I'd love to know, and I'd love you to say hi and tell me where you're coming from in the world. I'm very excited to be here with you tonight. This is the final free webinar. They've all been the same. But I just decided I was only going to do two, and I decided to add in another one just in case there were some people who wanted to get benefits from what they're going to learn tonight, and also I had a spare slot here tonight. So if you are already with me, I'm Camilla. I think you probably gathered that. Just tell me in the chat box to your right where you're coming in from. So we've had people coming from all over the world, which is just, that's the amazing power of the internet. So we've had people coming from Canada, from America, different parts of America. We've had people from, where else? France, Israel, Ireland, Scotland, so a little bit nearer to home. So it's just, it's for me, that's just so exciting to be able to reach people from wherever they are in the world. And so we've got a packed event tonight. There's lots and lots to cover. I go at a speed. If you have printed out your notebook, I hope you have, then grab a pen and your workbook, sorry, not notebook, or if you haven't printed out your workbook, then just grab a pen and a piece of paper. So that would be great. So we've got somebody on already, somebody quite familiar to me. And we've got Lucy from Cambridgeshire. Lucy, I think you are a friend of Tara. Am I right in saying that? Lucy Amos, I believe. So I'm pretty sure that's you. And thank you for joining so promptly. I think we're going to be a fairly small group tonight because I did put this out rather at the last minute. I was wittering on Lucy just now saying that it was quite a last minute decision. So, but that's great. So, it just, you'll get benefit from it. It's so great that you've joined the course. Tara and I are really excited to have you on. And we'll be meeting you next week in the Zoom calls, hopefully. Hopefully you can make that Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. But tonight is slightly different, as I mentioned in my email. So what's nice is that, the two things go together. And it's that's so I'm really thrilled you're on. So do ask questions. I mean, I have pretty much a section at the end for questions, but if we are a particularly small group, I might be able to take some questions as we go through, but generally it's designed for questions at the end. So do make your comments. And it's just 1 minute to 8. So at 8 o'clock, I'll kind of officially get started. So if you've just joined me, do tell us where you're from. So we've got Lucy from Cambridgeshire, Paul from London, and tell us where. Maybe you don't have a chat box very easily accessible, but hopefully you are. I think it's a little harder if you're watching on a mobile phone. So, but if you can make use of that chat box, it makes it all the more kind of, meaningful that we're, it feels a bit more real to be, chatting away in that chat box. So I think that was all. Just mentioned the workbook if you have it, or a notepad and pen. I like you to take notes. Okay. It is dead on time. It is Camilla McGill here, taking you through my masterclass, The Secrets to Managing Tantrums, Meltdowns and Misbehavior. So if you've just joined, a huge welcome, and do stick your name and where you're from in the chat box to your right. what I will be doing is I'll be popping the camera on and off because I just want, there's just points when we don't need the camera, and there are points when you might just like to see me, or yeah. So I'll probably just move on a couple of slides to say, first off, the goal of our time together. So the secrets to managing tantrums, meltdowns, and misbehavior. And the goal of our time together is I want to show you how to connect with your child and manage challenging behavior without using force or overreacting. I like that term, overreacting, because I think it's a good catch-all. That can encompass shouting, but sometimes parents aren't massive shouters, but do tend to overreact and tell off very quickly, make a big fuss about things. And I'm going to show you that how to connect without managing, to manage challenging behavior without those kind of things. And I'm going to just pop my camera off now. And here's what I'd like from you. I'd love you to take the time out for yourself. We're together approximately an hour. I'm really going to try to keep it to the hour. I do get a little bit over enthusiastic, and sometimes I go slightly over, but I do know that as parents, you're going to be tired at the end of the day and probably just want to relax. But so just take this hour for yourself, and I really recommend that you switch off any form of distractions, TV, put your phone on silent, and just enjoy and make the most of it, because it's going to be really, really valuable for you. So this workshop, we call it workshop, webinar, masterclass, this is for you if you are open to new ideas. You really need to be open to new ideas in order to make the most of it. So if that's you, if you're willing to be open to new ideas, do stick me a open in the chat box. One of the reasons that I encourage you to get engaged in the chat box is that it makes you really present to it, and it helps you get the most from it. So tell me if you're open to new ideas and put open in the chat box. And what I'd like to know is where you are in all of this. So who is having unpredictable tantrums and meltdowns? It might be that they are short tantrums, or it might be that you're having really long ones. Maybe you're having the challenge that your child won't listen to you. Maybe they point blank refuse to do things. So if that's you, just say in the chat box, tantrums, great, I've got people already. Unfortunately, my chat box, what I see is a little bit slow, but I can see that you're open, which is brilliant. So they won't listen to you, or they point blank refuse to do things, and you're left feeling very powerless or kind of confused as to how to deal with it. What about these kind of things? Different forms of rudeness, maybe things like back chat, maybe kind of, he's sticking his tongue out, that kind of things. Maybe they scream. Maybe they fight with you or with others, or other forms of aggression, pushing, shoving, throwing things. Maybe they're unkind. That could be to you, could be to a sibling, or it could be to other children. Maybe they're very defiant. Maybe, they absolutely want to do things the opposite way to the way you've asked them to, and they're not going to be told. Who's getting attitude? Sometimes known as three-nagers, if you've got that age of child. The age that I'm aiming this, my work is really, really applicable to actually any age of child. But my examples tend to be aimed towards the sort of from toddler up to about the age of 7, 8. So attitude, and it could be an attitude of a three-nager. Maybe your child is getting known as the bad or the naughty one. It could be in the environment where they go to school or nursery, or it could be that at home you've slipped into saying, that's just bad, or you're bad. It's very easy to do that when you're seeing these kind of challenging behaviors. But you may have a child who's not quite on this spectrum, but maybe you're just fed up with this, which is that you feel like that you're nagging constantly, or you're repeating yourself to get your child to do something. Maybe you start off calm, and then you go to the next level, and then you start really going at it, and sometimes it winds up in a shout. And maybe more than often, you know, each parent is different, and I'm absolutely not here to judge you. No, none of us are here to judge you. This is about really getting value from tonight. Who's feeling powerless? So that sense of powerlessness when you feel like you're being ruled by a child. I know that 21 years ago, when I first came into parenting, I felt powerless with my toddler, and it felt like he was just ruling the roost. So maybe that's you. You feel powerless. So pop these things in the chat box so that you know, we know where you are and I know where you are. Maybe you feel like nothing works. Sometimes it feels that way with one child more than another if you've got more than one. Sometimes you felt very competent with your first child, things seem to work, they seem to cooperate, and the second child is a different character and it feels like nothing works. So maybe that's you. Or maybe you're just worried that you're getting it wrong. Or maybe you don't want to repeat patterns from your own childhood. You want to do things differently. What I hear often from parents is that they want to have a different relationship with their children to the one that they have with their own parents. They want to have a closer relationship, more of a bond. They want connection with their children. They don't want to be the sergeant major. And they also are worried that sometimes they're being too soft, letting children get away with things. And they know that that's not right either, because then they feel like they're a bit of a pushover. So we've got lots of great comments already in the chat box, which is excellent. Yeah, and it can be to do with tiredness as well. But let's listen on. And what about this? Do you want to avoid the battles? I mean, let's face it, I suspect you do. I'm just going to pop my camera quickly on for some of you that hadn't actually seen my face if you've been joining, but do say where you're coming from. And so you want to avoid the battles. So tell me that in the chat box if that's you, if you find that you're having too many battles that you really don't want to have. If you want them to listen without shouts or threats, then stick listen in the chat box. And how about this? Who wants this? Who would like to get more joy from their children? Let's face it, none of us had children in order to shout and nag at them. And it just seems that sometimes, you know, just to get them to do the routine things involves that repeating and nagging and shouting. And then it feels joyless at times. So just stick joy in the chat box if you would like to have more joy from your children. Or if you'd like to improve, or if you'd like to learn, then tell us that as well. And so I've seen some comments already, you know, it feels like with the second child, nothing's working. With the youngest child, nothing's working. And it can really be like that. So this is what I want you to really, really take on board. And if this is you and what you want, then listen on for the rest of the webinar. If it isn't, then it's not for you. Imagine your child as this little seedling, and you are you're giving them the fertile soil to grow and thrive within. Being a compassionate parent is the most effective way of getting connection and cooperation and bringing out the best in your child. You might want to write this down. Being a compassionate parent is the most effective way of getting connection and cooperation and bringing out the best in your child. So if that's you, if that's what you aspire to, then just say yes in the chat box. So I am Camilla. You've already seen me a little bit, but I've stuck my camera back on. I'm absolutely passionate about parenting. I've been a parent educator for 20 years, and I'm the founder of My Parenting Solutions. That's my company. I'm also a mother of 4, and I have experienced the whole range of all the things I've talked about already. And I've tried and tested everything that I'm talking to you about tonight and way more on my own children. So some of you know, some of you already know that are enrolled in the program that I'm going to tell you more about at the end. It's called the Tantrum Taming Toolkit. And, you know, within that, you'll get so much more than I can give you in the short time we have together. But I want to make it really valuable for you. And I want you to really go away and feel like, yeah, that was a great hour spent. So this is my family. So my two children, my older two are boys, Nico and Felix, and my younger two, Scarlett and Alice. And that was them on the right, just towards the end of the summer last year, just before my two older boys were going back to university. They really do love each other, my kids. And that's part of that is actually really been driven by how we've raised them. But anyway, that's just, you know, the fact that they're standing there arm in arm is not an unusual thing for them to do. They get very excited if one of them's been away and is coming back. So what's unique is that I'm showing you tried and tested techniques. This isn't waffly theory. It's very practical, tried and tested techniques and principles based on thorough research. So it's a combination of the practicality and the thorough research. And that's what's unique about what I teach and about what you're getting tonight. Tell me something. Are you an action taker? Are you the sort of person that watches something like this and wants to take things further? You know, wants to put things into action, into practice within your own life. So if you're an action taker, give me action in the chat box. And I want to tell you about what is known in our family as our fateful holiday. So it is June 2005. We're away in France on holiday with some friends of ours with 3 children. I'm going to show you their 3 children in a sec. And our son Felix, who's pictured here, he's the second son, he's 4, and he's got 2 younger sisters, Scarlett, who was 2, and Alice, who was a young baby, and his older brother, Nico, who was 7. And we were on this holiday with our friends, and Felix was so difficult to handle. He felt like he was constantly annoying the other children. We'd hear screams, Felix hit me, Felix pushed me, Felix wouldn't let me in the paddling pool, Felix pushed me out of the paddling pool. At meal times, he would say that he didn't want the food and he'd push it away. We were so embarrassed. We were so frustrated by him, and we were going around in circles with him, just not knowing what to do. I found this picture the other day, and I could see from the picture, they often say, don't they, it tells 1,000 stories or something. There's some expression about a photograph. And I didn't see him as miserable. What I saw him as defiant and difficult and a troublemaker. So we go to the beach one day, and we'd spent the day, on the way to the beach in our car. Our children were in our car. Our friends 3, you can see who our friends' children are, the color of their hair. So the deal was that Nico sat in the very back row on the way to the beach, and Felix sat in the middle, which was the favored seat. And on the way back, they needed to swap. We've got Nico, Scarlett, and the baby Alice strapped in. Our friends' children were strapped in, and Felix was the next one to go in getting strapped into his seat. And he started to kick off. Our friends were parked right next to us, and Felix is screaming, "Get off me! I'm not going in that car. I want to go in the middle seat. It's not fair." And he's screaming. And so I start off with a bribe. Felix, here's some sweets. I've got the Haribo. Take the sweets and go in the back seat. He chucks them away. I say, right. Then I move to a threat. Right, that's it. You're not going to watch a movie when we get back. Still screaming at me. Then I move to a form of humiliation. They're watching you. You're embarrassing yourself. Absolutely no impact at all. I was hot. I was sweaty. My head was pounding. I felt embarrassed. And he's screaming at full pitch and arching his back and kicking against the side of the car. So I decided something has got to change. I have got to approach this situation differently. I knew that I was going round and round in circles, do that form of madness, doing the same thing over and expecting a different result. So I pulled him away from the car. He's like a bucking bronco. He didn't want to be held, but I knew that I needed to contain him. I was worried about him running off. So I sat on the edge of the dusty car park. My head is pounding and my mouth is dry, and I held him. And I realized that I just needed to be more compassionate with him. And I told him that it was okay and that he was like a pirate in a stormy sea. And he's still bucking and still screaming. And I told him that I loved him. And I said, I really love you, Felix. And then I said, but I think there's something more to it than this. I think that it's not just about the car seat. He started to calm down a tiny bit when he heard that. And then he shouted, Mummy, they tease me and you don't see it. And I said, darling, what's that about? And he said, they tease me about my pull-up. And what I hadn't realized is with Felix, when he was teased, it was like pulling the tail of the tiger, and particularly about things that are sensitive like that he was 4 and he was still wearing a pull-up. And then I realized that all this reaction wasn't about the car seat at all. It was about the fact that he was just feeling miserable and not liked by these other children, and they knew how to get him, because children are like that. I don't blame them, they're just like that. So I took him, he'd calmed down by this point, and I got him back in the car and I got him in the very back seat. I didn't change my mind, I didn't give in, I held firm. And that's what I'm talking to you about tonight, having that compassion combined with firm boundaries. So I got him strapped in the back seat. He went quiet and we drove off. And my husband said, what do you think they think of us? And I said, you know what? We've got to do the best for our children. And whether they think we're doing it wrong or not, we need to know what's best for us. And we need to treat him in the way that works for him. In fact, and I said, they may not be friends with us in 5 years' time. In fact, they are. And their son, their second son there on the right, is actually a really good friend of our son's, Felix. But that's not the point. The point is, it's about knowing what to do in those moments. So what I'd like to hear from you is who relates to that story? Who's had situations where you feel kind of powerless and you use force that you know it doesn't work? What resonates for you about that? And if you've just joined, nice to hear where you're from, but also who relates to that story and what resonates for you. Maybe you can stick something about what resonates, how you find what for you. What did you get from me telling that story? Because this is for you. I'm not telling you stuff just for my own benefit. I want you to gain from it. So reminding you again, the goal of our time together is I'm showing you how to connect with your child and manage challenging behavior without using force or overreacting. And imagine what it would be like to be a compassionate parent with consistent and firm boundaries. Like I said earlier, there's that little seedling that you're nurturing. What would it be like for you to be a compassionate parent with consistent and firm boundaries? Now, I'm not saying you're not compassionate already. I'm absolutely not. And I'm not saying that you don't have firm boundaries, but I suspect that you're here because you're struggling in some way. And so this is what I want to show you tonight, that it's what's possible. So what I'd like you to do now is bring to mind a stressful situation. Pop in the chat box some stressful situations that you experience on a day-to-day or on a regular basis with your children. What is it around? Usually it's around a hotspot. Usually it's around something like a mealtime. Or it's around getting them out of the house in the morning, getting them back from the playground if you've been out. Maybe it's shopping. Maybe it is bedtimes. Maybe it's bath times. Situations that you find really stressful and you just don't, you feel like you could really do with some help. So bring it to mind, but if you can, stick it in the chat box. I'd love to hear what kind of situations you are facing with your children that you find stressful. And as you're thinking of that, I'd also, leaving the house for preschool, great. As you're thinking about that, I'd love you to score yourself in terms of your competence in handling it, in terms of your ability to handle it well, consistently. How would you score yourself? If one is, you just feel like you really, really do, you just do not handle it well, and you're not the parent you want to be. And 10 is the absolute, you know, the parent you want to be, you're handling it, you know, in the way that you want to handle it. So how would you score yourself? So give me a number in that chat box of where you would score yourself when dealing with these types of stressful situations. So not staying in bed at bedtime. We've got leaving the house in the morning, brushing teeth, or leaving the house for preschool. Great. So what scores would you give yourself out of 10 in terms of your ability to handle it? And while you're thinking of your scores and popping them in the chat box, I'm going to take you through the compassion cooperation matrix. This is in your workbook, so grab your pens and write it down. So I want to explain the x-axis along the bottom, which is when you are connected and you're using that compassion, that ability, and I'm going to show you more about ways to do that as we move on, but that ability to really connect and be understanding of your child. And then up the side, we've got the kids' level of cooperation. So that's, you know, getting them to do the simple things that we require that are important for day-to-day living. So when our connection and our compassion is low, and if you look at down the side axis and we're getting low levels of cooperation, so they're not doing what we are asking, this is very often where we're nagging over and over. We might wind up shouting. We might make hollow threats. So, you know, things like when I was making hollow threats, like, you know, you're not going to watch TV. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to follow through on that one. But we might make other hollow threats. If it's leaving the house, I'm going to leave without you, we might say. Those kind of things. And very often they ignore us. So we've got a double whammy of sort of infuriation as a parent. They're not, you know, we're not feeling connected with them. We're feeling irritated, and they're not even doing what we ask. So that is quadrant 1. Please, if you're doing this, don't beat yourself up. This is not about helping, you know, making you beat yourself up, because we will all do this. And largely because we don't have the right systems in place, we don't have the right tools or the right processes to follow in order to get the cooperation and the connection that we want. So force and fear. I could have forced Felix. For those of you that heard my story, I can see people are joining. But for those of you that heard me, I could have forced Felix in the car. I could have used fear and said, we're driving off. I could have even driven off and then got him to go in the back seat. But the result of that would be I would have no connection. I'd never have found out about the teasing about him wearing a pull-up, and he would have felt really resentful. And that's the problem. If we can sometimes use force and fear to get cooperation, but then they're resentful of us. So that's not great either. So let's look at number 3. This is when we might feel very compassionate towards our children. We might feel very sorry for them if they cry or get upset about them. And of course, because we've all got heartstrings. So you're not going to be constantly in one of these quadrants, by the way. But very often when we're doing that, we can give in. And then actually the impact on the child is that it's confusing for them, because we've said one thing and we've done another. We've said no, that it's pasta. They've cried and carried on. And we've thought, oh dear, you know, I don't want him to go hungry. So you wind up making a peanut butter sandwich instead. And then it's confusing because the child is in charge at that point, and that's not good for them. So let's look at quadrant 4. This is where this is what tonight is about. And I'll talk to you how to take it further with my course about helping you to stay in quadrant 4. So quadrant 4 is about consistent boundaries. And it's also about having an emotional awareness to what's driving your children's feelings and what's driving their behaviors. In return, they respect us more, they listen to us more, and they feel connected. And when a child feels respected and connected with us, they are so much more likely to open up and also to be cooperative. The level of cooperation is high when we're able to stay in that quadrant. So in the hotspots, which quadrant would you be in? And that's the reminder. So where would you place yourself when you're, you know, trying to get them out of the house, they're not staying in bed, and they've come out of bed for the 5th time? Where would you put yourself? You possibly are a combination of number 1, number 2, and number 3. And that's really normal. It's called pendulum parenting, and we'll kind of swing from just giving in, or I'll just give him the iPad and I'll let him stay up another half an hour because I can't face the fight, or using fear, right, that's it, making some threat that they will be frightened of, or fearful that you're going to possibly follow it through. So it's that swinging, or you might make those hollow threats. So where would you put yourself? 1 or 3 people are saying, yeah, and this, again, no judgment. This really isn't about judging you. It's just very useful to see yourself. And that's what tonight is about, to be able to step out and see the kind of things that you're doing that potentially aren't working. What I want to tell you is about Felix and how he turned out. So some of you may have seen my, I sometimes write in my blogs about him. I mean, I'll write about my other children, but he's the one I've talked about already tonight. So he's 21 now. He's at university. He is a really charming, engaging, go-getting, compassionate young man. He loves his cat, as we all do. Some people might see me on Instagram. I quite often pop a little picture of Molly up there. And the really lovely thing is he's very close to us. So the other day he rang me up and he said, Mum, I'm really struggling with my preparation for my exams. He's got finals this year. He said, I'm feeling really anxious and I just wanted to talk to you. Now, a son of 21 that wants to talk to you is a gift. And that's what I would love you to think about, not just parenting for now, but thinking about the kind of relationship you want with your kids for the future. And he said, but on Monday, this was just this Monday, he said, on Bank Holiday Monday, I know Dad's playing golf with Nico, but I wondered if you'd like to come and visit me. And we just had the loveliest day. And something that he told me on Monday, I mentioned that I talk about him in this masterclass. And I mentioned that holiday. And he said, the thing is, I felt that none of them really liked me. And that will often drive poor behavior. If a child, or even us as adults, feel that we are not liked, we might be really pretty horrible back, or we are just not ourselves. So I thought that was so interesting. But I'd love you to consider that, the things that you're doing now is paving the way for a successful future for your child. So secret 1 is talk so kids will listen. So you might want to write this in your workbook: talk so kids will listen. Now, what do I mean by that? Why? Okay, let me just ask you this. Why is it important? Why is it important that we talk so kids will listen? What are we going to gain from that? Well, I would say probably that they're going to do what we've asked. We've got wisdom to impart, and we want them to listen to us. We've got stories to tell them. We want them to listen to us, but also we really want them to cooperate. But what about this? How do you feel if you're shouted at? Just imagine, you're an adult and you've been shouted at by someone else. How do you feel if you're judged? Felix felt very judged on that holiday. How do you feel? And how do you feel if you're told off by somebody? Imagine in the workplace, somebody told you off or shouted at you, or you felt judged by them. Would you really want to listen to them? And that's what I want you to consider. Would you really want to listen to them if you are being shouted at or judged, or just being told off or nagged a lot? Nagging is in that same bracket. Renata and Robert were in a very difficult situation. So Robert is a little 6-year-old boy, and Renata's a stressed working mum. Robert was in real trouble at school. She found that she had learnt that he had been banned from the school bus for hitting somebody. He was very rude and aggressive at home, and she was absolutely in despair. Now, you might not be experiencing things quite as severe as this, but Renata was really, that feeling that I'm sure you've all had, that kind of despair. I just don't know what to do. And she was going around in circles and making kind of threats about, if he didn't do this, he was going to have this and that taken away. And Renata decided to invest in my program, the Tantrum Taming Toolkit, and she learned so many things so quickly in order to really change things around with Robert. She learned the model of reflective listening, one of the things that she learned, but there's so much more within it. And the amazing thing is, within 3 weeks of accessing this program and really changing her approach to Robert, he was awarded given the award for the best behaved child that week at school and given a mention in the headmaster's newsletter. And he was allowed to go back on the school bus. And the positive impact for her was huge, because she was missing part of her workday by having to go to the school and collect him. She was stressed about it. So it really can have such a positive impact when we change the way we talk to our children and the way we approach things. So get this down. Behavior improves when we catch the good. You might think, well, that's all very well, but I'm not seeing a lot of good behavior. And I just, there's nothing to praise when they're behaving badly. But actually, I'd suggest to you, you turn it around and really look at things in detail when they are doing stuff right. So what could you do to get a quick win from what I've just said? Tell me in the chat box, just from that already, how to not how to talk. It's just talking so kids will listen. It comes from a book, which is the first parenting book I read. I'll tell you about that later. But how could you get a quick win? What could you do to get a quick win in order to get your child to listen to you? Tell me in the chat box. Tell us in the chat box. Well, we move on to secret 3, and I'm just going to take a little drink of water while I do that. So secret 2, sorry, not secret 3. Secret 2 is stand in your child's shoes. Why do we want to do that? Particularly when they're pressing our buttons. So listen, just imagine this child here. So say you've taken this child to a coffee shop and you've brought them a little hot chocolate, and then you've said it's time to go. It's time to go. You've got to perhaps collect someone, or it's just simply time to go home. And he has a little fit like that, or maybe a major fit. It's a button presser, isn't it? We feel really irritated by it. But if we could stand in our child's shoes and think about what's driving it, we might interpret this situation differently. We might think he's really disappointed. We might think he didn't realize that we weren't going to be here very long. He might be thinking he loved that hot chocolate, but it was really quite small. And that's what's driving him to have his fit. Now, I'm not saying you therefore give in and give him another hot chocolate, but when we're empathetic and stand in our children's shoes, we will respond differently to them. So already people are saying how they made a decision to speak nicely without sounding like they're nagging. And that's what Becky wanted. Becky, somebody's already mentioned that one child is more difficult than the other. So Becky found that with her daughter, her second child. She was having morning fights with her. She was having fights about getting her to get dressed and come to breakfast. And it was really making her miserable. And it's particularly in contrast to her older boy, who was, really just doing what he was asked. Often she was late for work. She was stressed by it. And also she just got into a dynamic with her daughter where she really didn't know how to get herself out of it. And she was consistently telling her off. So Becky learned about doing role play with her child. She also learned about reflective listening, which is something that I mentioned that Renata learned. And there's a little video of Becky. I think it's on my sales page. It's on a page that I'll tell you about, a website page. And she's just so genuine. I know where it is. Put it on Instagram. She's so genuine. And she just says, you know what? She's just learned to deal with her daughter differently. And life is so much better. And that's what I'd love for you, just to really realize how much better life can be. So standing in your child's shoes helps you connect with them and helps you to be more compassionate and helps you to think about what's driving your child's behavior rather than reacting to what you're seeing in front of you. Kirsty had a similar experience. She's actually different to the other two that I've described. But Nina, her little girl, who's pictured there, what a little cherub, was incredibly jealous of her little brother. And I don't know if some of you have had this kind of jealous behavior of an older or a younger sibling. I know I had it with mine, but it was really bad. And so what was happening was Kirsty couldn't even leave them alone for 2 seconds. And she felt like she was just constantly on at Nina. Don't do this. Stop it. Leave Rory alone. You don't be so nasty to him. and just getting cross with him and telling him off. And it was really, Nina was just getting worse and worse, and she couldn't see the end of it. And she also she also came on the program I'm going to tell you about, and she learned to use something that we call the 3 C's. So that's about staying calm, about connecting, and also about giving choices within limits. And what was interesting is she messaged me recently, and she said, and this is some time after she finished the program, she said, you know what, just today, Nina said to me, Mummy, you know that you told me that I could put some toys away from Rory that he can't play with? Well, here's something I want you to put on the shelf. And then I'm just going to go back and we're going to play a game together. She said it was like music to her ears. It's not every day is perfect, but she said it's so much better that she can leave them together. And Nina's not, just giving that really, really difficult and demanding behavior. So secret, what did you get from that? What did you learn from secret 2, which was standing in our child's shoes? So tell me something that you got from that. Is this making sense? Is it resonating with you? Give me a yes if it is. And I'm taking you on to secret 3. So secret 3 is about how our behavior impacts theirs. Now, I used to think it was the other way around. I don't know if you felt this, but I thought, you know what, their behavior, their defiance, their nagging, their shouting, that impacts me. But I'd like you to think of this the other way. Our behavior impacts theirs. So children are sponges. I'm just going to pop this back on again. So they are good news. Good news. They are sponges for the good. So we pour lots of we pour praise into them, and I do have a very specific way of teaching parents to use praise. We validate their emotions. We're happier around them. We smile more. They are sponges for that, and they're sponges for the shouting, and they're sponges for the irritation and the nagging. And who has had the experience when you've had your child shout back at you? So tell me yes in the chat box if you've had your child shout back at you, or you've heard your nagging tone or your critical tone come back at you. And it's a very discomforting feeling, because we realize that actually they are sponges. So, write that one down. Children are sponges, but good news is that they're sponges for the good. And here is what this is about. This is about our impact, our behavior impacts their behavior. So this is secret 3. So what do I mean by that? When we can get the balance of being positive, being firm, and being consistent, then we will really start to impact their behavior. So being positive, firm, and consistent has a really strong impact on their behavior. And it's not easy to get those 3 aligned. Most parents find they swing a bit. Sometimes when they're firm, they're coming down that bit too hard and they're not being positive. Or sometimes they're being very positive, but they're not being consistent about things. But when we've got that balance, positive, firm, and consistent, we're really starting to create that that quadrant 4, when we've got high connection and high cooperation. Michelle was really low in confidence with her mothering. I don't know if I've got any dads on here, by the way. It would be lovely to say if perhaps you're listening to, I'm seeing female names come up, but it would be great to know if there is a dad on the call, which would be lovely to know. So Michelle was particularly low in confidence. It was having a really bad impact on everything. She was wanted to sign up to do a course in art therapy, but didn't even think that she was capable of it. And she just didn't like herself, and she found that she was using threats or bribes with Liel, her little girl. She learned how to use stop, listen, and evaluate. She learned how to respond differently to Liel. It isn't easy. We're not taught how to parent. Who here would do a job? Tell me this. would you go into a really, really important job that you've never done before without having any training? Tell me yes or no, because I suspect the answer is no, that you wouldn't do a job that's probably the most important job in your world that you're ever going to have, i.e. being a parent. You just, why do we do it without training? It's just like, to me, that's madness. But so often it's parents hadn't thought about it, or they didn't find the right person that they connected with to learn from, or they didn't know what was available. But so Michelle wanted to learn to do something different, and she changed her approach with Liel. And she told me about bedtime not long ago. They're moving house, and she promised Liel that in the new house she was going to get a big girl's bed. She was moving from her cot, and at bedtime Liel got it into her head that the bed was going to be there that day, and she started to have a meltdown about the fact that she didn't want to go in her cot. You know what it's like, guys. Bedtime. We want them to we just want them to go to bed. And she said in the past she would have used some threats, or she might have told a fib and said, "Mummy's going to get you that bed tomorrow," which she knew she wasn't going to be able to because it was on order. But instead, she stopped. She really listened and stood in Liel's shoes, evaluated what she needed to do with the situation. And she approached it differently. And she said she understood how upset Liel was, and that she realized that she didn't want to go in her cot anymore because she's so excited about her big bed. And then she asked her a question, which is something that I always recommend with parents. And Liel suddenly went, "Okay, Mummy." And she said, "What would you like to do tomorrow that might give you some pleasure, might make you feel happy?" And Liel said she'd like to make cakes. She said that little moment took about 5 minutes. And in the past, it would have been a good half an hour to try and get her into bed. And she sent me a picture of Liel having made the cakes. So how would it feel to you? How would this feel to you to avoid conflict? Tell me how it would feel, so that therefore you're not shouting and nagging. Would it be calmer? Stick it in the chat box. Would you feel life was easier? Would you feel happier? Or would you feel more connected if you knew how to avoid conflict? So tell me in the chat box how that would feel. And what about this? How would it feel for you to stay firm but positive? Would that be a relief, that kind of permission to be in charge? Because we do need to be. I know that when I first started to learn about parenting, I just didn't feel like I was in charge. I felt like our eldest son, Nico, was ruling the roost. Would your child feel more secure if you were firm but positive? Would you feel more confident as a parent? So tell me, much happier and more relaxed? Yeah. And that thing, it's so interesting that we don't realize that actually when we're firm but positive and consistent, that our child feels more secure. And that's what you all want. I know you're here tonight spending time with me, that you are devoted parents. So I know that you just, you want to learn more, and you want to have that sense of being able to stay firm but positive. So it would be lovely, and you'd feel more confident. Yeah, and a skilled and informed parent will raise a resilient and emotionally balanced child. I don't know if you saw anything in the press this week, but Kate Silverton has written a book about resilience, and it's got a brilliant title. It's There's No Such Thing as Naughty. And I love that. You might see me on Instagram. I've talked about the naughty step, which I abhor. So if you are that, if that's your bet, if you think, I really don't like the idea of the naughty step, then, we're aligned there. So, but resilience is so important. Emotional balance for our children is so important, not just for now, but for the future, because our children are going to face difficulties. They probably already have, that bit of teasing in the playground, that disappointment that they can't do something, that frustration that they're unable to do stuff. And when they're resilient and able to bounce back and feel that they're still okay in themselves, that is so important for them. And having that emotional balance, the ability to articulate things, You know, Felix rang me and articulated that he was feeling anxious. Young adults, girls and boys, they can contain all that. And it's not good. We know from mental health studies how important it is to teach our children to express their emotions and also being able to cope with adversity. In fact, the Duchess of Cambridge says some of the science behind child development is extraordinary. It shows what a precious time this is and what an amazing opportunity we've got to really nurture their minds and put them in the best possible position for their future lives. And that's the investment that I really recommend that you make. Understanding what drives children, understanding their emotions, helping them be resilient and feel good about themselves. Self-belief is so important. So many of us are having to, you know I had to do a lot of work on my self-belief, not because I had bad parents, but because they just didn't know how to bring that out in me, how to really give me that sense of belief in myself. So these are the three secrets that we've covered. Talk so kids will listen, stand in your child's shoes, and our behavior impacts their behavior. And remember that we're aiming at that quadrant 4, which is about that emotional connection, that understanding your child, and also that therefore they feel connected with us and they're much more likely to listen to us and feel good about themselves. So tell me how skilled you feel at the moment with bringing out the best in your child. Give me a score on a 1 to 10 about how skilled you feel to really know how to bring out the best in your child. And as you're thinking about that, you can think about your score. Tell me how you would feel if you dramatically improved your skills and confidence. What would that be like? Somebody's saying it would be lovely and I would feel more confident. Yeah, and what might be possible for you if you dramatically improved your skills and confidence? Michael Burrows, who's a dad that attended the program I'm shortly going to be sharing with you information about, he said, you know, what he loved about joining in. Some of the dads are a bit reluctant, I have to say. Not always, but some of the dads think, you know, oh, do I really need to spend time on this? But what Michael said, which I thought was so interesting, is that he's now skilled to be able to get his little boy Maximus to eat his porridge. He's skilled so that he doesn't have to have a fight with him about getting dressed. That when it's time to leave the house, he knows how to handle him to get him into the car seat without a fuss. How would that feel for you or for your other half if they're listening now? To dramatically improve your skills and the confidence in yourself that you know you're doing the right thing as a parent. What would that be like? So yeah, we've got happier and more relaxed and you'd feel more confident. Excellent. Maya Angelou says a lovely thing. Success is liking yourself, liking what you do and liking how you do it. How would that be? You know, as a parent, really liking what you do and liking how you do it and therefore feeling successful at it. So usually we're left with 3 challenges at this point. I've given you a lot of information. And often parents will say, but, you know, how do I stop shouting? How do I consistently get them to listen and cooperate? And how do I stay consistently connected and really understand my child? Because these things aren't easy. But what I'd like to ask you so far is what's been most valuable to you? What has resonated with you? Is it that, you know, do you like the idea of having a compassionate approach with boundaries? Do you like the idea of just being really firm with things, giving yourself permission to be in charge? So tell me, come back to me if you've been multitasking and tell me in the chat box what's been most valuable, because I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what has been most valuable. And while you're writing that, you might also want to think about what action that you'd like to take. And maybe you want to jot that down, but tell me in the chat box what's been most valuable. While you're writing that down, it does come a little bit slow for me. I just want to tell you that I'm really not like designed, you know, to be this sort of earth mother, this parent that really absolutely knows how to deal with everything. I wasn't like that in the beginning. and it certainly didn't feel like it was coming naturally to me. I was, going around in circles, shouting at my children, doing this thing over and over, and I didn't like how I was. I wanted to do it differently, and I learned. And it's as simple as that. Just like you learn in a new job, you train for something, you get skilled. And it's really about knowing the tools and the processes to follow in order to feel more confident and skilled and bring out the best in your children. So the next steps I've mentioned throughout that I can give you so much tonight, but I want to talk to you about the next steps. I suspect because you're still with me, you'd like to hear. You don't have to, but I'd love to show you what's possible to take this further, to be able to dig so much deeper and learn so much more and see really, really fast results. But it isn't necessarily for everyone. So I've mentioned it already. I have a program called the Tantrum Taming Toolkit. I'm going to whiz through with you everything that is involved in the Tantrum Taming Toolkit. It's a program that I have developed in the last year. It has been incredibly successful. The parents that have gone through it already have absolutely raved about it. They just really love my approach. Now, my approach is something that I've been working on for 20 years, and I've tried and tested everything on my own children. But it's not for everyone. The nice thing is I really know that. In fact, I had an email today, rather a nasty email saying, I really don't like what you say. So fine, you know what? It isn't for everybody. And one of the things, having worked on myself, I didn't let that get to me. I was just like, okay, not for you. So the Tantrum Taming Toolkit has, like I said, it brings all the tools and the skills that I have picked up from the research that I've done over all these years that I've been working, educating parents. And it shows you how to parent with compassion and boundaries for a calmer and easier family life. And believe me, that's what you want. Who wants to shout at their children? Who wants to get it, nag and just have a difficult time with them? I know that you want to bring out the best. You want that child who's resilient. You want that child who stands up for themselves and believes in themselves. And this is coming from within the program. Now, it's called the Tantrum Taming Toolkit. It isn't just about tantrums. It's a catchy title that parents remember. But it's about handling misbehavior, because if your child is misbehaving a lot, it makes life difficult for them. I mean, let's face it, they are going to be told off more, whether it's by you or by other people. And that makes them feel unsuccessful, and it can often make them unpopular, and it can make them, like Felix was feeling, unliked. And then it becomes a vicious circle. So the program it's an online program that's combined with coaching with me. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So it's an online program that comes in 4 modules, and I'm going to whiz you through the modules. So you access it at any time you want. You get a login with your own private password. You log on to the platform and you can watch it in bite-sized sections. So you can do 5 minutes at a time. And when you come back to it the next time, it remembers where you were and you just press resume. So you don't even have to worry about, remembering where you'd got to in the program. I know I find that really useful when I do programs. So each module links to the next. The first one is about the foundation for mindful parenting. So it's about self-care, understanding your children's, having a different expectation of your children, adapting your style according to the temperament of your child, which parents find incredibly useful. Module 2 is strategies for dealing with tantrums and misbehavior, because very often you'll be doing the same thing over and over. And so therefore, when you learn the right strategies that you apply to your child, you will see that you know how to deal with those meltdown moments. You learn how to minimize the length of the tantrums. You learn how to avoid them. And really importantly, you learn how to get kids to recover and take responsibility if they have made a mistake, and say sorry. But that's not sorry. that's a really different kind of sorry, because you've taken them through a process to help them understand what they've done wrong, rather than plonking them on the naughty step when they just plot revenge. Module 3 is about bringing out the best in your child. You can transform the behavior of your child when you learn the language of descriptive praise. So I've already said, talk so kids will listen. This digs really deep in that and shows you how to do that. It also shows you how to validate their emotions. It is vitally important for your child's mental health and their future development that you learn how to really dig deep, and not by saying what's wrong, because children won't know, but there's a very specific way of learning a language that helps you uncover their emotions without directly asking them. And it deepens your connection and it builds your child's emotional intelligence. Module 4 is systems for keeping you sane. I'm all about having great systems, rules, routines, and I talk about just different kinds of rewards and consequences if they're needed. But generally, the big focus is on having consistent rules and routines and rewarding your children for following them. And then I also show you how to set up for success with different kinds of situations using the GREAT method. Becky had been really unsure about coming on this program, and she messaged me and she said, I feel like I'm being the mum I dreamed I would be, and it's helping me not need the numbing of the screen time too. Often we're giving children screens because we just can't face the reaction, or we just don't want to get into the argument with them. And Becky really learned how to minimize the screen time and get so much more cooperation, so they could go on bike rides and play and do stuff that Maximus had been very, very resistant to. She just said, thank you so much for the course. I'm so glad we're doing it. So it comes with 4 modules, and just listen on with me because I'm so excited about the bonuses that it also comes with. It's 4 live coaching calls. Now, it closes tomorrow. The access to the Tantrum Taming Toolkit closes tomorrow. We're going to put up a way that you can link through to the website to learn more about it. But I just need you to know that it closes tomorrow and it won't open up again until September. So it comes with 4 group coaching calls that give you extra training and support. So you get the online bit and you get 4 Zoom sessions where the group comes together, supports each other. I answer questions. We go through each module week by week. You'll have gone over it yourself, so you'll have really understood it already. But we bring it to life in the group coaching calls, and parents absolutely love those calls. So reassuring. They also love the Facebook community. So it has a specific private exclusive Facebook group just for the Tantrum Toolkit community, where you can share wins, ask each other for help, contribute, support each other, and ask me questions. And I jump in that, and I love that, answering your questions and giving extra tips and advice and tools. It also shows you how to reduce your stress. Very often the shouting and the overreacting will be coming from the fact that you're not working on yourself. So I'm a big believer in meditation, and I have a whole section on that designed for us by an expert meditation teacher, Lauren Bear. Melissa Denham was at her wit's end with battles with her daughter Miller, and she just didn't know how to change things, but she followed the steps, the processes that I teach you within the program, and she is literally a different child. Melissa said she just needed to change herself. And she said, forget expensive toys. This is the best present to give to your family. I'd love you to join me. Like I say, it closes tomorrow. I'm going to have a chance to for you to ask questions in a sec. But Andrea messaged me this week to say, just weeks after taking the course, she noticed how much happier her son is in the mornings before school. She learned the tools to help her do that. She thought she wasn't a bad parent. I'm not saying any of you are bad parents, but she just didn't know how to consistently address things in the right way. And she's just life is so much better, she said. So the toolkit comes with these 4 modules online, the group Zoom coaching calls that are once a week for 4 weeks, starting next week. They're in the evening, by the way, on Tuesday evening. The private Facebook group and the stress management. Now, the value, I haven't actually even put up the normal value is this program is huge. If you think about the change in your life you could get from dealing with your children, not just for now, but that foundation for the future, the investment of only £297 in comparison is tiny to the gain that you get from it. You can also split the payments. You can split it over 3 months, so it's £115 a month. Or if you're coming from North America, it's $413 or $160 a month. I offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So I'm very confident in the program. And if you, after 30 days, you've been through the modules and you're not happy with the product, I will refund you your money. So there's really no risk and certainly no hard feelings if you feel that it hasn't been for you, that you haven't got the results that you wanted to get. So like I say, it's on tonight. I'll just let you see that. It's only for £297, or you can split that payment over 3 months at £113 a month. I would really encourage you to consider very carefully about joining. If it's a question of getting your other half on board, I will be trying to post a video tomorrow that's Michael, who came on the program, who's just, you know, such an advocate now and had been a little bit reluctant to join at first. What I'd like you to consider is the cost to raise a child. The average cost to raise a child, this comes from a survey by Money Supermarket, believe it or not, is £100,000. We spend average on baby gear, they've split it boy and girls, not much difference. Baby gear alone is well over £5,000, £5,600. On toddlers' clothes, we spend an average of £4,100 for girls and a little bit less for boys. So if you think about £297 as an investment for the future of your child, it's really small in comparison, because believe me, the tools that I teach you within the toolkit, I am still using with my children who are ranging between the ages 16 and 23. It is lifelong tools that you will learn. And like I say, you're doing a job that's the most important job in the world, and you're not trained for it. I suspect you're not trained for it. So just so you know, when you go from the link that has been, I believe, has been put up, you'll go at the bottom of that page, you can choose your payment option. So the website that you'll see tells you all that's in the program. And then at the bottom, you can choose whether it's one payment, you click through and it takes your secure payment here, or you can split the payment. So just so you know, that's what it looks like. And you get that 30-day money-back guarantee. So I would really love you to take action. Sometimes parents say to me, I just don't think I've got the patience. Honestly, the patience comes from knowing what to do. So often we're feeling stressed because we're going round and round in circles. We're just getting that same result, and we're trying to do something. We're trying to get a different result by doing the same thing. Getting myself in a tangle here. So patience comes from really understanding the tools, the processes, and knowing how to handle your child. I should be able to handle it myself. Well, actually, why should you? You know what? Why wouldn't you want to learn better to handle the challenges? And the other thing is, I need time to think about it, is what parents often will say to me. Well, actually, it closes tomorrow, so you don't have much time. So I'd love you to sign up tonight. You will get immediate access to the first module the minute you sign up. Our first coaching call is next Tuesday evening. You'll get all the information sent to you about that. And so you don't have much time. And as I say, it won't be open again for a good few months. So tell me what's holding you back. You're still with me here now. So tell me what's holding you back. What are your reservations? What questions do you have? But I'd love to know, if you're on the fence, I'd love to know how to help you make a decision. Because this is really about making the decision, do I want this or don't I want this? I would love to help you to make that decision. So you tell me what your reservations are, what's holding you back, what questions do you have, because I'd love to answer them. So there is, that's the link, TTT April, and do ask me some questions. So some questions that I've got that are typically asked is, how long do I have access to this program? So the online part of the program, you have access for forever. Sorry, it's a lifelong access. Just know I am constantly updating it. I bring in Piggy. So this is Piggy, who does role play with me, and I'm frequently adding more role plays because parents might in the Facebook group, or perhaps on the group, weekly group calls that we meet once a week for 4 weeks. They'll tell me a situation they have with their child, and then I will go away and I will record a role play with trusty little Piggy. So I'm always improving the program, but you get access to it for life, and parents review it frequently. They tell me that they've actually, gone over the modules, and it was really good to have the reminder. So the group calls, as I say, are once a week for 4 weeks. We're doing the first 3 weeks in Tuesday evenings in May, and then we actually have a week break, and we do the first Tuesday evening in the 8th, I think it is, the 8th of June, and they're 8 p.m. UK time. They are recorded, so parents you can review it if you can't make it, so which is great. So you can go over that call if you can't make it. Some parents say, my child isn't as difficult as the children that you've described. Is it worth it for me? I just say, all children will misbehave. If you haven't seen it yet, they will. And this is really about bringing out the best in them on all levels, not just about to do with misbehavior, but bringing out the best in them for all different ways, so that they are more resilient, so they feel good about themselves, that they're able to stand up for themselves, they really believe in themselves. So do stick a question in if you've got one. And another one is time. Parents will say, I'm just so busy. Well, actually, you save time, because when you know how to get your child out of the house super fast, you're saving time. You're also saving energy, and you're saving that emotional turmoil that is involved in going round and round in circles with your child. So you definitely save time. But I'd also say, if it's something that you really want to do, we make time for it. I know if there's a program I really want to watch, I don't watch much television, but if there's a program I really want to watch, I make time for it. And that's what I would suggest. If you're committed to it, you will make the time. If your partner's not on board, I've had pretty much it will be the mum do the program, and her partner may have watched some of the online modules but doesn't join in the Zoom calls. That's totally fine. And what they notice is that by the way they are responding so differently, the children are responding so differently and so much more positively to a change, their partner is usually suddenly decides, actually, this is a pretty good thing, and they want to try some of those things too. So look, I'd love you to join. It closes tomorrow. Take the action. If you've got anything else to ask me, stick it in the chat box now. Otherwise, I'm going to love you and leave you. And thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure to have you here tonight. So unless there's a last minute question, I'm just going to say goodbye. It closes tomorrow, and you'll get the website is I'm pretty sure has been put up in the chat box there, but it's very simple, myparentingsolutions.com, TTT-April, TTT standing for Tantrum Taming Toolkit. So that's all from me. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a good evening. Thank you. Great, Lace. Lovely to have you on. Do you have any questions just before I go? Because I've seen that's very nice. You've said thank you. Do you have a question? I'm looking forward to starting the new course next week, says Lucy. Brilliant. That's great, Lucy. Yeah, I'm so glad you are. Lace, was there anything you wanted to ask me before we sign off? Do ask, because I don't have to go. I just assumed that there was nothing else that you wanted to ask, although it is a bit slow coming up in the chat box. I do recognize that. I'll just give you a couple of seconds. Are you on the fence, Lace? Is there something that I could help you with? Is this something that you would like to invest in? Okay. I don't think so. No. Okay.